In the early 90s, there were many 2D platformers, but amidst them all stood two up at the top, Mario and Sonic. You all know the story behind these two, how the two companies butted heads and how they eventually ended the feud. These two aren't so much rivals anymore, but they do occasionally collide for a bit of friendly sportsmanship. Case in point, Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Sonic Superstars, a new 2D Mario game that isn't a port or online game 9 years after New Super Mario Bros. U, and a new 2D Sonic game that isn't a collection 5 years after Sonic Mania, both of which released within 3 days of each other. So, how'd they turn out? Well, let's just say one is more favorably received than the other, but what about me? Well, that's what you're here for. I'll be covering every part of each game in this one review, one at a time. Of course, this won't be as simple as the good and bad sections as I usually do for reviews, so you might want to pop some corn. With that said, let's begin with Mario! So the game's story is that Mario and company are visiting the Flower Kingdom, which is the neighboring kingdom of the Mushroom Kingdom. The ruler of the land, Prince Florian, is showing off one of his Wonder Flowers, but Bowser shows up to crash the party as usual. He takes the Wonder Flower and merges with the Flower Castle to become Castle Bowser and wreak havoc across the land. Mario, Prince Florian, and the gang all chase after him to find the Wonder Seeds to take down Bowser before he uses his power to conquer the universe. As you can see, pretty standard stuff for 2D Mario. The only difference is that we aren't saving Princess Peach for the bajillionth time. Actually, she's accompanying Mario for once, but we'll touch on that later. For now, I want to talk about the visuals. On the one hand, they're beautiful. I love the colors and fantastical elements throughout. But on the other hand, I'm not really wowed by them? Maybe it's because I've been spoiled by more powerful hardware, but something about this game's visuals didn't really grab me. By no means are they bad in the slightest, but I guess I just feel like I've experienced better elsewhere. Though for what it's worth, I love that the characters are stylized after the old Mario commercials from back in the day. That's a cool touch. Not to mention the animation on the characters is really expressive. I love seeing it. Music is whatever though. Aside from the first level theme and one of the Wonder Flower themes, I can't remember most of the soundtrack. In terms of gameplay, it's what you'd expect from 2D Mario. You jump around, collect coins, stomp enemies, and reach the flagpole at the end. However, this game has a couple new things to bring to the table. The first of which being a whopping 12 characters to play as. But really only 8. We got Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy, Blue Toad, Yellow Toad, Toadette, 4 different Yoshis, and Nabbit. With the exception of the Yoshis and Nabbit, all the characters control pretty much the same. There's no 3D world attributes to be found here, so it's just a matter of picking your favorite and going with it. Unless your favorite is Yoshi or Nabbit, in which case they're the easy modes of this game. Yoshi can be stunned by enemies, but can't take real damage, nor can he use power-ups, but he can flutter jump and use his tongue to swallow almost anything. Meanwhile, Nabbit is completely invincible and also can't use power-ups. Now, I understand making Nabbit the easy mode, but why Yoshi? People love Yoshi and want to play as him. Don't make him the easy mode. Another new thing this game adds is badges that can be equipped. You get these badges by either completing challenges tied to that specific badge or by buying them from any nearby shops. Said badges can have abilities such as a gliding cap, a spin jump, and a grapple vine, effects such as jumping out of a pit once per level, starting a level with a super mushroom, and a sensor for collectibles, and not so good effects like continuously dashing or jumping. Personally, these badges are fine. Most of them are pretty situational, and the rest are borderline useless. Like, the only time I actually went through and used all of them was when I got the badge for the first time and wanted to test it out. Aside from that, I mainly stuck with the glide cap, the spin jump, and occasionally the super mushroom badge, while leaving the rest to just sit in my inventory. In terms of new power-ups, we got the infamous elephant mushroom, which along with creating new interests for any artists out there, allows the character to destroy a bunch of stuff with their trunk, as well as occasionally spray water on dying flowers. We got the bubble flower, which creates bubbles to trap and kill enemies, and be used as extra platforms. And we got the drill mushroom, which, while not technically new since Galaxy 2 did something similar, lets the characters drill underground to get past walls and surprise enemies, and even go on the ceiling. It also serves as a nice helmet for aerial attacks. I like all of these new additions, but my personal favorite is the elephant mushroom, despite how cursed it can look for any characters other than Mario and Luigi. But of course, we can't forget about the main selling point of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, the Wonder Flowers, or as I like to call them,
crack. What the fuck?
Just touching one of these will cause a whole level to go completely crazy. Sometimes the world will squash and stretch, sometimes you'll ride a stampede of raging animals, sometimes you'll transform into a spike ball and wreck stuff, and sometimes you'll get a bunch of singing enemies that can actually belt out a tune. Things do tend to repeat as you go on, but there's enough variety of wild shenanigans to where it never gets truly dull when a Wonder Flower appears. Though that can't be said for the levels themselves. I can't speak for everyone, but personally, by the time I reached World 6, I started to feel a bit tired of the game. The Wonder Flowers did help alleviate this, but they all still had the same basic structure of run through level, use power-ups to discover secrets, snort some coke for a bit, you win. Plus, despite the new ideas present, the level themes are all the same basic Mario themes. Grasslands, deserts, clouds, poison swamps, lava, etc. There are occasional airship levels, but only 3 of them that are also really short. If I had to pick one area that the game is especially bad at, it'd be the boss fights. Remember how in New Super Mario Bros. Bowser Jr. was the mini-boss of each world, and his fights only slightly changed every time? Well, imagine a slightly better version of that, but for the normal bosses. To their credit, Bowser Jr. does do new things with the power of wonder every time, but you're still fighting Bowser Jr. every time, meaning the strategy is always the same. Avoid his spinning, bonk him on the head, survive him showing meth up your nose, and bonk him some more until he's dead. I don't know, it just feels really cheap to have Bowser Jr. as every boss fight in a game as creative as this. And to make matters worse, there's only 5 bosses in the whole game, including the final boss. Granted, the airship levels do have these short sections with a conveyor belt at the end of them, but I'd hardly count those since they're so easy they make 3D Land's bridge bosses look challenging. The final boss does kind of make up for it with this unique concert aesthetic and unique method of attack, but why couldn't all the bosses be like this instead of just bratty little Junior with another flavor of weed? With all that said, I think that's largely it for Super Mario Bros. Wonder. It appears Nintendo's got another banger on their hands given the fan reception, and personally, I'm happy for them. I don't think this game is amazing or anything, but I had a good time with it. Though, given that some people claim this game is perfect, quote unquote, I'm a little worried about how those people are gonna take this half of the video. But then again, I managed just fine with the FNAF movie. I'll probably be fine here. Either way, we gave Mario his spotlight. Now it's Sonic's turn. Now, the plot of Sonic Superstars is a bit tough to figure out, at least for some people, but here's what I've gathered from watching the cutscenes and the prequel animation Trio of Trouble. Dr. Eggman has hired Fang the Hunter, along with Trip the Sungazer, who is more of a hostage than anything, to capture a bunch of chonky flickies to use for his latest creations. But it seems he also wishes to unleash an ancient dragon from its prison to also utilize its power. Sonic and the gang catch wind of his heinous plans and set out to stop him. Honestly, when I put it like that, I begin to question why people have so much trouble figuring out the plot of the game. Does it have something to do with them yet again stuffing plot and important details into a prequel animation on YouTube? Probably, and I don't like that any more than the rest of you, but to say this game is an incomprehensible plot is pushing it in my opinion. That said, let's get into the game. In terms of presentation, Superstars is kind of on par with Super Mario Wonder in my opinion. I'm not particularly wowed by it, but I can't deny that it looks really good. I especially love the animation on the characters, not just the hand-drawn cutscenes. The character models have this bouncy feel to them that just looks really nice. The music has sparked some controversy amongst fans, with some even calling it Sonic 4S, but I just think it's good. Not every track is a winner, but there's a good chunk of memorable ones. The typical gameplay loop is the same as Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Most of the levels have 2 acts with a mini-boss and a normal boss, but a couple levels are only 1 act long, which is a nice change of pace. Some levels even have a character-specific levels, which are pretty cool too. Speaking of characters, we got 5 playable characters this time: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and eventually Trip after she portrays Fang and Eggman. The former play and feel the same they had before, which is good, and Trip is no slouch either. She can double jump and climb up walls like the Spike Wisp, which make for a fun character to play as. Regarding level themes, much like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, they're all familiar themes you've seen before, but unlike that game, they have more than just an acid trip to make them stand out. Be it something as simple like a new color palette, or new gimmicks like a snake you can bounce on, or going through the level in reverse. Not all of them are winners, of course, but they're all at least fine to me. Of course, we can't forget about the game's selling point, the Chaos Emerald powers. By entering one of the many golden rings present through the stages, you'll enter a special stage where you'll swing after a Chaos Emerald, and when you get it, you'll unlock a special power tied to each emerald. I find the special stages themselves to be quite fun, and some of them actually gave me trouble before I figured out what to do. Sure, they're not the best things ever, but they're far from the worst special stages ever. As for the powers, we got Avatar, which summons a bunch of clones, Bullet, which is the burst whisk, Water, which is self-explanatory, Ivy, which creates a beanstalk, Vision, which reveals hidden platforms, Slow, which is chaos control, and Extra, which gives each character a unique move that honestly should have been a natural ability. And of course, we got the super forms for when you get all 7. To address the super forms, some people are bothered by the fact that Sonic gets his signature super form, and Trip gets a yellow toothless form, while the others just glow a bit. Personally, I understand the criticism, but am not bothered by the super forms, considering that Tails' super form was literally just him glowing a brighter yellow despite already being yellow, Knuckles' super form turned him pink, which is impossible to take seriously in any context, and Amy never had a super form until Sonic Origins Plus. Not to mention Mighty and Ray got similar treatment back in Sonic Mania, and I don't hear anyone complaining about that. Back to the powers, while some of them aren't really useful like Vision and especially Extra, the rest I had a lot of fun with. Bullet and Water are great for exploration, and the Avatar and Slow are especially helpful with some of the bosses. Speaking of the bosses, apparently most people hate the bosses, and the main reason I've taken away from them is I'm an impatient bitch. No, seriously, the bosses are more of a waiting game with sections where you can't attack for a small bit, and apparently people who played this game just lose all sense of patience when they happen. Personally, I find all this overblown because the waiting sections aren't that long, and the rest of the fights are cool set pieces for 2D Sonic. Like, if you guys want to see a real waiting game, go fight Iblis in Sonic 06. Even the final boss of the main story wasn't that bad. I did struggle a bit the first time around, but then I sat down and replayed it and found myself getting better and enjoying the fight more. What certainly helps is that it is my favorite song in the game. The final boss of Trip's story, however, good golly goodness. I haven't gotten this mad at a Sonic boss since Metal Robotnik for Sonic 4 Episode 1. For context, after you beat the main story, you unlock Trip's story where you play exclusively as Trip through a harder version of the main game. And by harder, I mean they really like spikes and egg robos. All that comes to a head with the final boss against Fang. His first phase has a bunch of these insta-kill lasers that aren't too hard to avoid but can still easily take you out, a bunch of missiles to avoid, and clones to trip you up. What makes this fight so hard is that this is the real waiting game of the game. You can only attack Fang once per cycle, and it takes a really long time between each time you can attack. The aerial powers aren't much help either, so don't bother to use them. Then the Fang mech comes out and all hell breaks loose. Beating it is simple as hitting the spawn and shoots back at it, but it still is the problem of taking forever to give you your opportunity to attack. The worst part being the electric webs, which you can break out of, but only just barely before Fang will insta-kill you with his core Smash Brothers style. Not to mention his headbutt attack, which comes completely out of nowhere and comes out so fast that you likely won't be able to react in time. I spent so long on this fight, and even though I did get better with each attempt, I also got angrier with each attempt as the more bullshit elements came into play. Thankfully, this isn't the final boss, but if it was, it would be an awful way to end the game. Luckily, the actual final boss is unlocked after beating Trip's story, the Black Dragon. Yeah, you know, the Black Dragon, the creature that Eggman showed at the start of the game and nowhere else. Yeah, that. And apparently this fight is one of the most reviled final bosses in the series. Everyone who's made a review on Superstars hates this fight, and speaking personally, what the f*** have you all been playing? Like, everybody complains about the ring spawns being too random and some of the attacks being too hard to understand. However, I don't agree with any of them. All the attacks are things you'll likely come to realize within at least 2 attempts, and the only way I can see someone thinking the ring spawns are too random is if they stay in one spot for a stupid amount of time like a dunce. The fight is tough and does require a fair bit of waiting at points, but I don't think this fight is bad. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it does a good job of giving a climactic end to the game, despite the lack of foreshadowing. In fact, I'd probably place it at number 17 out of 42 on the final boss ranking. Is that okay? Am I allowed to say that? Am I allowed to sing the praises of a widely hated final boss? Or is the Sonic Death Cult gonna kidnap and kill me for daring to say something so sacrilegious? Well, whatever. It's not like this is the first time I've had a spicy Sonic take. With that said, that's Sonic Superstars. All in all, a pretty good game that people hate way too much in my opinion. In fact, I'd like to address that for a minute. A lot of people are giving Superstars a lot more shit than it deserves. And I believe it's a combination of 2 things. 1, Sonic fans cannot stay calm about anything. Whenever something even not so good happens in a Sonic game, most fans tend to scream about it at the top of their lungs as if it killed their father or something. Even the more reasonable ones are guilty of this in some regard, and it makes it hard to take them seriously, especially with this game. Number 2, a gigantic double standard. What I mean by this is that many fans nowadays have this rather extreme hate boner for classic Sonic simply existing despite being totally fine with him before. Generations and Mania were great games that people loved, but the Millisecond Forces came out, all hell broke loose, and poor classic Sonic was borderline demonized by the whole community. Like, I understand being tired of the classics, but I don't understand shouting about how classic needs to die or burn in hell or what have you. Hell, I even saw one person, who I may or may not have mentioned in my last video, say that Superstars was somehow worse than both Sonic CD and Sonic 4.
Oh wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
Like, if that person happens to be watching this, I gotta ask, have you really played Sonic 4? And if you have, how long ago was that? You gotta have some extreme classic Sonic hate boner to say something like that and stand behind it. What's my point with all this? My point is, y'all seriously need to lay out classic Sonic. I know this isn't the first time the entire fanbase has nuked itself due to one bad game, but you gotta realize that one bad game doesn't destroy a character. Again, he was great in Generations and Mania, and they did a good job with Origins, despite what some people like Sam Procrastinates will tell you, because apparently they're such a purist that seeing some slightly blurry splice when you zoom in is enough to make them mad. Like him or not, classic's here to stay, just like 2D Mario is. And if future games build off the example Superstars set, I'm optimistic about the future 2D Sonic. With all that said, before I get into the final thoughts, I might as well discuss the parts of Superstars that correlate to all the previous Sonic lists I've done. Aside from worst boss, the final boss, and the best song, since I've done that already. The best level is Speed Jungle, and the worst level is Press Factory. The best boss is the Egg Prototype, and I place Superstars overall at number 14 on the game ranking. Now, what do I think about Trip and Fang? Well, starting with Trip, she's fine. She looks cute, she's got a nice character arc, but I don't find her anything special all around. I guess I put her between Big and Cream since she's fun to play as, but I can't see myself putting her any higher. As for Fang, similar case really, neat design, but his character is really inconsistent. In the prequel comic, yes there was a prequel comic, he's shown to be capable if a little clumsy, and in Trio of Trouble, he's shown to be kinda half clumsy, half capable. Meanwhile in the game, he's not very capable for the majority of it. Most of the time he's either failing like a toon or just acting like a douche. Plus his other boss fight is just kinda He's not really compelling, but I don't really hate him per se. At least I wouldn't if he didn't have that abhorrent boss fight at the end of Trip's story. So because of that addition, he's not only going down to number 17 out of 18 on the villain list, but he's also being officially demoted from Fang the Weasel to Fang the Dirty Rat.
Actually, Fang was originally supposed to be Agent Bob, but the localizer changed him into a weasel and another bear. I don't care!
So that's both games covered. 2 new takes on 2 long-running 2D and 3D platformers for the new generation. And while I certainly can't speak for everyone, I had fun with both of these despite my criticisms. Even though Mario Wonder was received far more fondly than Sonic Superstars, I personally see this as a win for both of them, just not to the same extent as Mario fans do. And I also want to dispel any myths that I'm a contrarian for the sake of it. I went on an extensive rant about how bad the Master King Coco's trial is. That was last month. And in this video alone, I tore apart the Fang mech, which is hated by literally everybody. I don't just scour the internet for popular gaming opinions and go against them just because. I just genuinely find myself disagreeing with a lot of popular opinions, and this is one of those cases. Super Mario Bros. Wonder isn't Game of the Year material to me, nor is Sonic Superstars the worst thing since Ken Penders. They're just really good games in my opinion, that may or may not be worth the $60 price tag depending on who you are. But I'm sure some of you in the comments are probably asking, which one do you prefer? Indeed, which one do I prefer? Is Sonic still my one true love in the face of Mario, or did Mario's latest romp come out on top? Well, you know what? I'm actually not going to answer that. Unlike something like the RE4 video where I wanted to go through the 3 versions to see which one I like best, I don't really feel satisfied picking one of these fun 2D platformers as my favorite. I just wanted to have fun talking about these 2 games that happened to release within days of each other. I guess what I'm trying to say is, this video is not Mario vs. Sonic. This video is Mario and Sonic. Buy both, play both, enjoy both. Form your own opinions, and I'll respect them just fine. So long as they're not, these games are worse than Sonic 4 and I don't know, Hotel Mario or something, in which case you're going to Brazil. As for next time, we got the Christmas Eve Q&A, and if I can find the time, a special ranking video involving Mario. Leave your guesses as to what it could be in the comments below. See you next time, everybody!